Good evening, friends. Anyone tuning in to watch this video tonight, I appreciate it. Just trying to see if I got my camera in a good position. Just wait a moment here, give people time to start watching. Oh, okay, awesome. There's already people in the chat. That's awesome. Good to see you guys. Thanks for tuning in. So I wanted to make a stream tonight and talk about the importance of actually studying the Western canon of literature, why I actually value it, and I think that it's in danger of basically, fading away. So I wanted to make some points on it and also talk specifically about George Orwell's 1984 and explain exactly how. We're living in a very Orwellian dystopia right now, and I want to explain exactly what I mean by that, like with specific examples of how we're living in an Orwellian world. And that was making me just think about my English degree and how I no longer regret going to university and getting a degree. I would never advocate anybody go to university today to get a degree in English literature or in the arts or humanities, because everything's corrupt and been watered down on purpose, and it's shitty quality and not worth investing in or spending money on. But I did my English degree at Carleton University just before the education went completely shitty, and I actually think it was a pretty good quality education, and I'm glad now in hindsight that I invested in myself and learned really how to think, and I don't regret it the way I did for a while. Zed's in the chat just said, hope you're still living up in Ontario. I am. Good to see you. Thanks for saying that. I'm actually going to spend some time in the Ottawa Valley region this weekend filming some content for this channel, some outdoor content. And then the next weekend, I'll be down in Southern Ontario visiting my parents, filming more content. So I'm going to get to see a lot of Ontario in this month, which I'm really excited about, filming all kinds of, like, mostly outdoor fitness stuff and some other cool stuff. But yeah, good to see you in the chat. So anyway, because an English degree is something that's not directly applicable to making money right away, like it's not a skilled trade and it's not a STEM field, which are valuable things. A lot of people just think it's a complete waste of time, or that a degree like an English literature degree is garbage, or something that is a luxury or something. And when I was younger, I figured I had a long life, and it was just good to, I valued education for education's sake, which not a lot of people do. So I went into debt and I got this English degree. And then later on in life, when I was struggling, I was like, man, why did I do this? Or why did I get debt over that? Or what a stupid investment that was. But now that I'm older, and with the way society's going and all this bullshit around me, I can recognize all kinds of things that are happening clear as day that most people can't. And it seems like the average person around me has become incredibly stupid and conditioned by mainstream media and all these, and a poor miseducation, all this other shit, to become like actually like just incredibly stupid, and people don't know how to think anymore, and it's really alarming, you know. So now I'm glad in a way, like with things going downhill the way they're going, where a lot of us are all going to end up in the same place anyway. So I was like, I kind of, being able to foresee some things coming has saved me from and wasted effort in some areas of life. And it's definitely saving me in another way. So, people, I think, underestimate the value of this stuff. So another thing is that the Western canon I'm a bit of a European exceptionalist for sure in some contexts, and I also extremely value like other the insights from other cultures too. But in certain areas, I do think Europeans excelled beyond anyone else. Literature is one area. The Western canon specifically is a lot of it's thousands of years old, and a lot of it has sustained the test of time of staying relevant, because it encapsulates some kind of timeless wisdom. And so with the cultural Marxism and all this other stuff going on, and the active movement to basically rewrite / erase European history, I say all the more reason to preserve it. And I think that I'm also trying to present an ethos of wanting people to be, like cultured thugs or philosopher kings or whatever cliche you want to use. But I'm always sharing this idea that like we should be working on perfecting our bodies and our physicality and being philosophers, at the same time. So I think I'm doing a pretty good job of living up to like the ethos I'm trying to promote. I'm in pretty good shape. I train boxing every day. I read and I'm well educated and stuff. So I think I'm doing a good job of being about it. And the Western canon, like a lot of the stuff that used to be standard reading in high school and stuff is being phased out. To Kill a Mockingbird is, things are going on banned lists that definitely, it's, have people are missing the point completely. But it's really about just getting rid of rid of white literature. And the thing is that because cultural Marxists want to insist that all cultures are equal, like they don't think there's anything special about the Western canon. And whereas like I took getting my English degree, I took courses like African literature and Aboriginal literature and South Asian literature, and I think all cultures have produced some pretty awesome literature. But the Western canon is the best. It's the cream of the crop stuff, right? And so I think the whole system of education is flawed now fundamentally, and no one should pay a lot of money to read this stuff. But what there should just be, like, if I had more time and money and resources, I'd make a whole video series with good quality production values and everything on just breaking down and teaching people about all of the most seminal works of the Western canon, just having it on my website for free, like a free library. Just because I value the literature, and like people should be able to read books and then actually be able to like go online and just get an education about them for free. And doing a degree, it's not just about anybody can read a book, but if you do an English degree, what you do in a lot of the undergrad courses is you read books, and then you go to lectures and you learn about the author and the context of when the book was written and the themes in the book and stuff like that. And then you also write essays throughout the course, arguing and comparing the books that you read and learning how to structure argument, make good arguments and stuff like that. So you're getting knowledge, but you're also learning how to think critically and structure arguments and digest the information in the books. So on that note, I just think that also, people don't value physical books much. I'm just an old school guy, and I love having like a physical copy of a book in my hands in my library. So, and the other thing is like there's an Orwellian process going on now of censoring and editing things online. So if you own a physical copy of a book, you know that at that point in time that's what the book really was. So that's, for example, rather than have a digital copy of 1984, I think everyone should have a physical copy of 1984 and read it and understand it. So the Western canon, for those of you that aren't really familiar, there's too many books in it for me to name them all. Obviously, it's a huge list, but the seminal works that you should all invest in right off the bat are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Everyone should have a copy of each on the shelf. The Iliad and the Odyssey, which of course is from ancient Greece. That's basically the start of the Western canon, and those books are in mass production, so they're cheap to get at a used bookstore. You should the Iliad, like if you want to study like the Faustian soul and the Western mind, you definitely have to read them. Most of you know the story of the Trojan War and the Peloponnesian War and the Trojan horse and all that. It comes from that. That's pre-Christian, so you really got to start there. And then, of course, the second most influential book probably in the Western canon is, of course, the Holy Bible. I got a nice copy this year just to have in my library of the King James Version. You can get the Catholic version if you want, but not from a religious perspective, but from a literature perspective. I can, as an intellectual, I look at the Bible in different ways. I think there's truth in it. I don't consider myself a fundamentalist Christian, but I come out of a Christian background, so I'm familiar with it, and I think that the Bible is a work of literature with multiple authors, and it's really fascinating. And if you're going to study the West in general, you have to be familiar with the Bible, so everyone should get that, even if you're a die-hard atheist, you should familiarize yourself with it as a work of literature if you want to be cultured. And then the other two seminal works. So I'd say there's four main things that you have to have if you want to be well-read, especially in the Bible, the Iliad, and the Odyssey, which are kind of like one work collected together. Plato's The Republic. If everybody was educated properly and was really familiar with Plato's The Republic and Orwell's 1984, and also read Propaganda by Edward Bernays, they recognize everything that was going on right now, and wouldn't be such sheep. So you got to get a copy of that. And then this one is for all the men out there, especially have to get a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is his commentary on Stoic philosophy. And this is the kind of stuff that the elites internalize and use to be successful in life. And they want to kick away the ladder so that other people won't be successful like them and compete with them. So they don't want you to know this stuff. And this is like that's why they promote victimhood culture so heavily in our culture, because victimhood culture is actually the opposite of stoicism. And stoicism is the way you get stronger and thrive long term. You don't want to be a victim. Being a victim is not something at all that's cool. So on that note, I'd love to, like, I can't talk forever tonight, but Nietzsche, Beyond Good and Evil. These are pretty cheap to get. I hate to use Amazon once in a while. I use Amazon for certain things. I think I got a set of these because everything was cheap on this. So if you get Meditations that have on your shelf for like another $9, you should definitely get Beyond Good and Evil. And the reason I bring that up is because it would be fun to have a conversation on morality, and we could talk about Christian morality and the Holy Bible and compare that with Nietzsche's commentary on Christian morality and slave morality, master morality and stuff, and talk about that, because I think there's a lot to be said, especially about how, like, I have a lot of, I agree with most of his commentary on Christianity. I think it weakens people in a way, but it has also taught people disciplined, and which has strengthened the mind of people. So Meditations would be these three books. They just it's like wine, these three pair well together. The Holy Bible, Meditations, and Beyond Good and Evil, because you have different. Nietzsche, proposed the idea of becoming the Ubermensch or whatever, or becoming a new class of man, which I like to kind of play with that theme. So I think that we can learn from Christianity, but we also need a morality that's stronger. So I recommend everyone just invest in those books and take the time to read them. And then, say if we were having a book club or something, say I make up like a Freebird book club, that's where we got to start. I'll just take a moment now to read the chat and catch up. Great to see you guys are chatting here. Acewald, Omf, great to see you guys. Omf says, Freebird Media, if Westerners learned Latin plus Greek like they used to, a lot of society's problems, such as loads of increased alphabet people, would evaporate overnight. Yeah, absolutely. People would recognize what's going on, right? Like, it's a lot of the stuff that the elites are doing, none of this is new. So if people were, I think that Europeans have definitely, the average IQ of the population in general has decreased, actually. A couple hundred years ago, I think we were peaking. And I wish that I was fluent in another language other than English, and I'm semi-fluent in Spanish, or I used to be able to be fluent enough that I could make pretty good casual conversation with Latin people, but I've lost a lot of it. So, but I could with a year of practice could be very fluent in Spanish again. But I wish I was trained in multiple languages, because it's just really good for the brain, developing more gray matter, more neural pathways, and the more you learn to think, the stronger your brain is, and it's all very good from a physical and mental point of view. And so, like Amph is saying, if people read multiple languages, especially like Latin and Greek, the important ones, and were reading the Western Canon, they'd recognize all the stuff that's going on around us. Sorry, Isold, I see you said C question above. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure which. Oh, sorry. Okay, I see your point. I missed this. Sorry. Do you think there is something to be learned from militarized superstates of 1984 in contrast with the pacified world state city of London and Brave New World? Our society seems to be like the latter. Yeah, I do have something to say on that point. Just 1 second, because I'm going to grab a book off my shelf also to comment on this. I was just thinking about this on the bus today. I was thinking about this book, Tribe, by Sebastian Junger, and he makes this point that prior to World War I or II, I forget one of the world wars, I guess it was the First World War, all of these social scientists and all these intellectuals basically assumed that when these when Germany and England started bombing each other, everyone had a very cynical view of human nature, as I have or would have, and assumed that everybody would just go to everyone would just panic and they would go to hell when they were under attack. But he talks about this weird psychological phenomenon where crime and mental illness basically evaporated during wartime because the whole population just came together, and like in all these areas where otherwise they'd have high crime rate and rape and all this other stuff, like just nothing was happening, and there's this tribal psychological effect that kicks in when you feel like your group is under attack, and this actually kicked in heavy in both world wars and surprised the predictions of everybody, because a lot of their strategies were based on behavioralism and all these models of what they predictive models that completely failed, because in weird situations people do rally together. So the point being that I think one of the reasons that we've become so degenerate and disgusting these days is because with modernity and all this comfort life, we don't actually have any threat. Most people don't serve in the army or face realistic combat or physical violence in their lifetime anymore. So everyone's sort of because of human nature, everyone's kind of turned on each other or become hyper individualistic, and it's kind of toxic. So my point being not that war is good, but that some sort of war or like a unified struggle or enemy does tend to unify the mind. So in 1984, they're in perpetual war. These three giant super states that are actually kind of working in partnership, really, and it just people just become adapted to this constant state of war that they don't really understand, and it always kind of shifts around. They can't keep track of who their enemies and allies are and stuff. Is there something to be said for that? Possibly, because I can see the need for like I'm saying, like some kind of external threat, I guess, to make people work together as opposed to everything disintegrate. However, but what I also think is that like modernity in general is unnatural, like Ted Kaczynski points out, and that there's all these other problems in general, and that I don't really know what the solution to the overall like lifestyle problems of modernity are. Possibly in the future, China will become an existential threat to the West, and then maybe that combined with, we're overpopulated anyway, so with a lot of population loss from war or other things between now and 2030 could cause a war, and then it could be good for the West because it could unify people again, bring back, like I think that European people have these mechanisms that are dormant in them psychologically, because we've become so domesticated and whatnot that they don't need to be activated. But in other circumstances, like the Nazi Germany, which is really just yesterday in relative time, shows that obviously like this collective mindset can kick in super hard, and that all the tribal psychology is there in a sense. So I think in the future, there's no reason to believe it might not be activated again, depending on how chaotic things get. Sorry guys, I'm just reading the chat now. I don't have a Muslim girlfriend, guys. I was joking around the other night talking about why white Sharia becomes appealing, because there's so many classy, attractive Islamic women in countries like Turkey. So yeah, but don't panic, Zed. So anyway, 1984. There's some lessons to be. Everyone should read this. Most of you probably have, but I'm sure that people will watch this stream in the next few days, and a lot of people that haven't actually read it. So to spell this out for you, and the people that watch this that actually just hate me on the left, a lot of people on the left they always try to frame like the Trump era as like being Orwellian or something when it really wasn't, and in many ways it's worse though. But in 1984, some of the key takeaways are the way language is used to manipulate people, and how language is systemically dumbed down and simplified so that people's thinking becomes dumbed down and simplified. This process is clearly at work around us. And then there's also this process that's detailed about rewriting the history of the past, which is a gradual thing that you do in the archives. And I could show you links online about how Wikipedia, even the founder of Wikipedia says, it's basically been hijacked by groups of radical leftists that strategically spend days and days rewriting things. And Wikipedia is not a reliable source on anything anymore at all. And I think that with white culture and Western culture and the Western canon and stuff, it's all it has to be kept alive by people and like a subculture that value it. That's why I think all this stuff should be like explained and shared for free. Because what like Western history and European history is going to be completely rewritten, and then it's going to become a lie. It's already becoming a lie, like the things that they teach in the universities and the way, because academia became completely left dominated and now is more than 90% leftist and becomes far left. That becomes ideological, which is almost a type of pseudo religion, and that religion is kind of at play now, and that ideology is working with the government and also like with the with big the media and corporate media and stuff and it's having this effect of like lying and rewriting history for it to be more marketable to like a Marxist globalist audience, but really it's not objectively true. It's dishonest. So having physical books and being aware of your history is just important, because they're going to lie to you about it. Also, on that note, here's some interesting information. I got an email last week from Ancestry.com, and I had done my, I had sent away and done DNA thing with them, and I thought I was going to get more detailed feedback from them, and they give you a very generic feedback, but they said, we've updated your DNA profile with some new information. I was like, okay. So I got it back. My DNA is essentially, my profile is essentially exactly the same, except the 12% of me that was considered Scandinavian before is now Scottish. So I essentially have lost I no longer have any, no, I have 3% Scandinavian DNA, according to my ancestry profile, and 12% Scottish. And then the rest is German English. So still completely Western European, but Scottish now instead of a little bit of Scandinavian, I guess. But I thought that was just funny that I did that test like 2 years ago, got results back, and then got an email last week that said, hey, we updated this, here's your new thing. So anyway, but I just think that everybody should know their history and be proud of it. I've always said this and been consistent. All people, the Japanese people, Islamic civilizations, African people, Native Americans, Europeans, everyone should be aware of their history and proud of it, or the aspects of it that they should be proud of anyway. And I'm sure that all cultures can find aspects of their culture that are worth being proud of. No different for whites, right? So I'm proud of like the Western Canon, which isn't just obviously I'm Western European, right? And the Western Canon has a lot of influences from that does have influence from outside the West, and also is like Christianity is a Semitic import, and all the Greek stuff, they're Mediterraneans, not Northern Europeans like me, so it's not a racial thing. But the West in general is something that I really admire, and the Marxists will want to completely reframe everything, which I don't think they should do. So the Western Canon again is super important. The books I already recommended, I think everyone should have, and then there's no official list of the books of the Western Canon, because there'd be at least 500 to 1,000 if you wanted to get like really expanded and obscure about it. But if you wanted to try to boil the Western Canon down to like 75 books or somewhere in there, I could start listing out other seminal titles. Faust, Shakespeare, obviously important, like a bunch of you could take all of Shakespeare, or just like some seminal works of Shakespeare specifically. My favorite Shakespeare of all is King Lear. Kind of reminds me of my own grandfather in some ways. The Death of Arthur, or the Mort d'Arthur, the story of King Arthur is awesome and worth reading. I'm not sure if Sherlock Holmes counts as like I guess Sherlock Holmes is a character of the more recent Western canon. I always really liked Sherlock Holmes for some reason. People should. I don't know, like Sherlock Holmes. I also think that Tolkien is something I super love, and everybody should read The Hobbit, Tolkien, and Lord of the Rings, and The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, 1984. Brave New World. Brave New World also super relevant to today. Oh, sorry, I kind of digressed there. I should return just for a minute to 1984. As I was saying, the use of language to dumb down people's thinking, the rewriting of history, the constant, being monitored 24/7. That's all happening. Totalitarianism with complete loss of almost like all freedoms. That's happening. And what's even more shitty and scary about all this is beyond Orwell's horrible vision, because the technology now, this is like Orwell combined with Ted Kaczynski, gives you this, and Idiocracy, this weird place that we're ended up today. The algorithms and the technology can be, and the iPhones and the social media platforms basically monitor and track us 24/7. So it's not good, and it's becoming we're headed towards totalitarianism, and totalitarianism, like the Western, again, even the fiction of the Western canon, like the Lord of the Rings, has these themes that are transcendent for a reason. One thing that's really important: ultimate power corrupts absolutely, or absolute power corrupts absolutely, and the elites that are going to be in charge in the future are going to be corrupt, and they're going to be power hungry just for the sake of power. And just like Orwell says, they're going to just want to break you down. And really, in Orwell's vision, people are basically stupid because language is dumbing them down. But we're taking this to a whole new level. And with modern research and information that we have about how not all people have an internal monologue, and me just doing more research and reading more and learning more about how the mind works and how neurons work, and how if you don't use it, you lose it, kind of principle of like using the brain. If they don't need to think, and they're not encouraged to think, and they're conditioned to be certain ways, in a way, I think we're headed to a world with transhumanism in the future, where the elites will use technology to become, almost more superhuman, and at the same time, they'll breed almost a separate subspecies of humanity that will be more like cattle, that will be dumbed down. And I know that sounds almost like science fiction, dystopian, but really, try to think realistic about this. A lot of people, if they're not trained how to think and they're conditioned a certain way, in 1 or 2 generations will be so inferior to those of us that are of higher IQ. It'll be almost a different subspecies, because they're turning the human race stupid. Sorry guys, I'm just gonna go back to the chat here for a sec. Sorry, I see the bickering going on. I can't help but smile. Aswald says, 1984 is written to criticize Stalin from a Trotsky perspective. Do you think it's worth criticizing the slave morals of Trotsky and Orwell from the Stalinist point of view? See, that's a great question, and I wish that I had things set up right now so I could bring you onto the stream and talk live, because you could comment on this. Do you think it is worth criticizing the slave morals of Trotsky and Orwell from the Stalinist point of view? Well, one thing, perhaps yes, and you could help me do that better than I could. Keep in mind, Orwell has his own views, and he's influenced by Trotsky and so on. But there's a lot of the themes and the processes in 1984 I still think are more universal. So it's like he could have been a fascist, a member of the Nazi Party, and the book as it stands is still sort of applicable to all kinds of totalitarian regimes. So, and if you think about it, and I'm curious, comment for me here. Like in 1984, it's from the perspective of the state, they have supreme power, which I guess is definitely not a slave morality kind of thing. So, Sorry, you're making me think out loud. I'm trying to think of like how Orwell presents slave and master morality in 1984. For those of you who don't know, you kind of got to read Nietzsche and Beyond Good and Evil to understand this concept. But Nietzsche kind of talks about how Christianity presents a type of morality that and I think this is true for a lot of Europeans who become Christian. It trains you to be meek and to have a morality that almost like glorifies being weak instead of being strong, more like the Romans had or something. And this is one of the reasons I think there's a lot of truth and wisdom codified into the Bible that's important. And I'm not a materialist, so I'm not a materialist atheist, and I am. Although this is a loaded word, I am a spiritual person, I guess, for lack of a better term. So the Bible is important, but also it does teach a morality that isn't going to work for me in the present context, spiritually or practically. And I want to combine the goodness of Christian morality, I guess, with more of a stronger ethos or ethic that. I see it even now when people around me in real time adapting things. Slave morality it definitely weakens people. Is totalitarianism the only thing that can fight totalitarianism? Why appeal to the Trotsky about morality? To be honest with you, I'm smart enough to recognize a problem, but I'm not smart enough to give you a solution right now, so I don't know how to fight modern technology and modern totalitarianism. Sorry, because those two go together. I have to finish reading this soon. This is The Anti-Tech Revolution, Why and How, Theodore Ted Kaczynski. I'm trying to be a very well-rounded intellectual, so I'm looking for perspectives from the anarchists, the fascists, from everybody. I don't know how to, I've been made a second-class citizen in this post-national state of Canada now, and this is not good, and it's annoying, and I don't know how to fight back. I vote for the PPC for the time being, but with the technocracy setting, that's the thing. If people read Plato and the Republic, they'd know of the three classic forms of government, and they'd understand the deep flaws of democracy, which is a huge part of the problem and the way we've been taken advantage of now. But then there's this point to be made that we're now in a new type of thing that's not actually laid out in the Republic, called the technocracy, which is making people, manipulating people by controlling their impulses through mass media, and that's really not good. So how to fight back against this super technology that has deep fake videos and technology that can monitor us 24/7 and blah blah blah? I don't know. I have to think about that. To read that Kaczynski book and see if he has any practical ideas for how to. I'm already going back to a proto-anarchistic existence in the sense that I'm not renouncing my citizenship or anything, but I'm trying to live like a libertarian and self-sufficient, physically fit with my family. I'm so glad that my nuclear family is based and that we can help each other with growing our own food. We have backyard chickens. My sister is a registered nurse and naturopath, and with a science and degree in nursing. So between everyone in my family, my dad being a firefighter and paramedic, everyone brings stuff together, and we're kind of going semi-anarchistic because we're trying to avoid the healthcare system where we don't have access to a lot of stuff anymore anyway because we don't have certain passports, blah 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 blah. But I don't believe in. I do know people. I have friends who are evangelical Christians, and I see them being motivated mostly by fear, and they think the end times are coming, and they're just checking out by basically being like, well, Revelations predicted this, and they're just kind of sitting around waiting to evaporate into heaven when the rapture comes, like a Marvel movie, like God's gonna soon snap his fingers and they're just gonna poof out of existence. Some of them really think this, and I think it's some sort of bizarre cope mechanism. It's hard to motivate these people to fight back against any kind of evil authoritarianism if they're resigned to pacifism. In other streams before, I talked about Christian anarchism. I talked about The Kingdom of God is Within You by Tolstoy, and I've talked to genuine pacifists and tried to and I have engaged with Christian anarchist thinking, but I just can't get. I personally, I'm not a pacifist. You know, I believe in. I believe in the heroic archetype, and the hero uses whatever he needs to fight evil off, to protect people, to defend people. You know, a defender. Pacifists cannot be defenders by definition. So it's just not in my archetype. Even my name is a Greek Alexander, defender of man. Right. I really like having that name. And I just don't like slave morality. But I do also think that I personally have come from this Western European background. I think that I'm an extremely kind-hearted, empathetic person, which is all just part of my like essence, which has to be partly like the evolutionary process that I played into that had to be influenced by Christianity. So, you know, it's I'm not like there's I've benefited tremendously by being shaped by it. It's just but I don't practice like a fundamentalist Christian lifestyle today. Awesome. I just got a super chat from super appreciated. Let me find it here. Says Huxley, the world ends with euphoria and hedonism. Orwell, the world ends with slavery and tyranny. Asimov, the world ends with AI and human extinction. Muslim, the disbelievers pursue all three via their master, Iblis/Satan. Okay, that's kind of awesome. Definitely appreciate the super chat. Interesting perspective. You're not necessarily wrong here. The disbelievers pursue all three via their master, Satan. AI it seems to be becoming evil. Just trying to process this euphoric. Yeah. Okay. So we unfortunately. I don't know if Islam is necessarily the only way to avoid those three things, but those three things do seem to be destroying us. And great reference drop there for all three of those intellectuals. Asimov, of course, is one of the three godfathers of classical science fiction literature, not classical, the golden age of science fiction, I should say. Also had a son, I believe, that was caught with a huge amount of child pornography. And I just remember people bring that up a lot because they're from a Jewish background, and his son ended up being this giant pedophile, so that was weird. But Asimov, along with Heinlein, who wrote Starship Troopers, the classic that you should all have, and the other dude there that wrote Childhood's End, Arthur C. Clarke, those are like the three godfathers of sci-fi, all awesome. I like guys like Philip K. Dick, and I like the specific subgenre of cyberpunk science fiction the most. So I like Philip K. Dick more than any of those three guys, but all three, the big sci-fi guys, good intellectuals, definitely worth reading along with Huxley and Orwell. I actually like Brave New World more than 1984 overall because I like the John the Savage character. I resonate with that character a lot, and you know, I living in Toronto, it's more Brave New World than 1984 for sure. It's Brave New World because a lot of people around me, including people like my housemates, my peers, my coworkers, especially my coworkers, people I see on dating apps or I've seen on dating apps, people are about short-term pleasure, a lot of drug use, very few people into like the kind of stuff that I'm into, like stoicism, honor, martial arts. It's all, you know, traditional masculine stuff. It's a liberal culture, so the girls are all very liberal, and a lot of the men have become simpy hipsters because they've adapted to trying to appeal to the women by giving them what the women, you know, appealing to them what the market's demanding right now, which is like simpy obedient kind of guys that whatever, I don't know. It is what it is. Sorry. Says the heroic archetype, Muhammad Saz is where it all culminates at. One thing that I like about Islam, I like Christianity because the Christ archetype is this ideal human figure that is supposed to be, as it was presented to me growing up as part of my white bioculture in a white rural Protestant Christian area. Christ is this all-loving, pure loving being, expression of God that's, you know, forgiving and nice and kind and all of that. So there's something about it that makes people idealize like being a really good person. In Islam, inversion because Muhammad is a conqueror. So there is something like really alpha Chad about that, and definitely more of a master than slave morality perspective on things. But it also, I don't know if it, like, I don't know if that generates the same kind of empathy throughout it, the bioculture, as say Christianity has. I honestly don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm more agnostic on it, and I wonder because those are like on the surface, the conqueror of Muhammad and like the pacifism of Jesus, those seem to kind of have like be like opposite archetypes. So they would have to, that would have to have an effect, I would think. But of course, like even I come from a Christian background, I'm still like, when as an intellectual, when I rationalize it, I prefer like a different kind of spirituality. This is also why, of course, we all have to study the Bible if we want to study the Western Canon. But I'm more into like trying to explore more proto-European spirituality. Like I get like I want to learn. I don't want to become a pagan, but I'd like to study paganism. And I'm really into like Vedism, which Hindu is based off of, and I believe Vedism is like the product of Aryans. So I think Christianity has become, when it was imported into Europe, the Europeans affected it and had as much of an effect. They took the ball and ran with it and turned it into their own thing and had their own effect on Christianity, right? As much as it had its effect on them. So, I think it created an empathy in certain people. I've inherited like some kind of empathy in my nature. That's it's a product of my environment and how I was raised. But there's also it activates things that I'm innately happen to be, which has to be influenced by that. I don't know. Maybe I'm speculating here because really my dad's side's Catholic, and the Catholics are mostly that's mostly just about obedience, and there's a huge amount of like old school Catholics back in the Middle Ages where have been very they conquer warriors just like anyone else. So I don't know. Sorry, let me get back to the chat question for a second. It's supposed to see two questions above. Imagine if 1984 is written from the point of view of someone who thrived within the superstate. Do you think this could be more conducive for geopolitical success? Yeah, this is why I'm really glad that you specifically caught this stream tonight. Super glad. I'm I'm more of an agnostic or somebody that likes to study all kinds of things and things are circumstantial. So there is something to be said for a good third party superstate that could be run well. But I tend to oscillate, and as I was becoming more, I'm more of a third positionist in many ways, and I'm not a fascist because even fascism, I think, as an umbrella term, is too specific now to last century, and that I'm fascistic in many ways because if I was running my own nation, there are laws, and I like discipline and strength and acknowledging that life is struggle and having all of that be like part of the cultural ethos of the country. There's a lot of fascistic tendencies I have and types of authoritarianness to me, but I'm not a pure authoritarianism. I'm not a pure authoritarian, and when I used to see myself as I'm a nationalistic minded person too, not a globalist. So as a Canadian, I was a patriotic Canadian who was nationalistic minded in Canada, and I still am to a degree. The problem is I've lived long enough that Canada has literally mutated from being like a certain type of mostly bioculture inspired nation into a post-national superstate without any actual core values or identity. So now I'm not really patriotic to something that's just made me a second-class citizen. So I'm not patriotic per se to my state or nation. I'd like to fix it, but at this point in time, I vote PPC, which obviously is not a permanent solution to anything because they have all these flaws and they're more libertarian-minded. But what I'm getting at is, in a roundabout way to your question, is that because we're dealing with a tyrannical state right now, I've taken on all these libertarian, perspective on things, and I'm starting to wonder if Zed says you don't get it. I'm not sure specifically what you're talking about, but like in a way, like if you're talking about the need for a super state, I don't know if it's possible to get a good one going without it being corrupt. I mean, I'm literally agnostic on that too. I don't know anymore because I kind of see the appeal and glorifying in that, but I'm also wondering if like maybe the reason literature on that doesn't really exist is because that is as much of as an ideal as like a communist utopia that isn't like a real thing. Um, oh, okay, sorry. They were not talking to me. Yeah, okay, sorry. Freebird, do you think having a strong state on your side is beneficial regardless of views on policy? Yes, I do. I think that you and I would agree that a different paradigm could produce different things, but like we're in a flawed system, and I don't like our pure capitalist, neo-feudalist dictatorship. In a different type of paradigm, you could with different values sort of innately built into the society. You could have a strong superstate because the soldiers and the police force, etc., would be of better quality people that wouldn't be just following orders necessarily. But the more I'm learning, like I'm always trying to evolve, and I'm always trying to study things, and like the more I learn about propaganda and human manipulation, the more I realize like most people are just not free thinkers, and a lot of people by their nature want to be slaves or be at least led around and told what to do, and most people crave some form of authoritarianism. I just don't know how to get a good I don't really believe it. We've had conversations before, Acewald and I, about empire, and I'm a nationalist-minded person, and I see how that becomes an argument almost for empire, but more about like I liked Canada before when it was a smaller type of nation state, and it could have had a cool culture that was like insulated, and then with a strong state. Like I do believe in theory in having a strong military. By the way, we don't have our military has intentionally been hollowed out and it's made weak, right? So we're very vulnerable right now, and this is a bad thing because China's obviously has like a global ambition. So I don't know, the future is going to get really chaotic. We need to get a small state going, and then we can think about the super state. What do you think of Idiocracy and Demolition Man? Awesome question. So I was talking with somebody with this the other day. Idiocracy got everything right in many ways, except for the gay stuff. I love Idiocracy. Hilarious movie. Just watched it like a month ago. Really funny. And the way everyone's dumbed down, and a lot of stuff in that movie like came true, but they didn't pursue everything like with the LGBTQ plus YZ925 shit getting so extreme. So that was pretty funny. And Demolition Man, I shared a meme last week on Facebook, and it just has that fat guy in the moo from Demolition Man, and it said, remember when in Demolition Man in the future when everyone's a fat pussy and a moo and no one has any freedom? Not so funny now anymore. That made me laugh because that kind of called out, that sort of showed like the feminization of the population, but in Idiocracy they're still calling each other fags and being all homophobic and stuff, so it didn't see the effect of the queer theory and everything. Could mandatory service be a good way to create a symbiosis between soldiers, citizens, and the state? Yeah, absolutely, possibly. That's why I said everyone should read science fiction and read literature, and of course Starship Troopers, because you and I know I've talked about this, and I unironically think that the model in Starship Troopers might be the solution to things. I like the PPC because the PPC is not race-based at this point in time, right? Like it's more about just the right kind of people coming together, and I like the idea of like a system in Starship Troopers where it's not really race-based. Anyone that goes through this thing that kind of acts as a filtering moral eugenics system almost, or something, because or a filtering system where you have to have brave people that are committed to something, that bond through this type of struggle and stuff together, which military service gives you, and then you've earned your stake in the society, that you have blood in the game, all that. I think that might be a serious solution, because again, if people read The Republic, they'd understand the flaws of democracy, which is what we're living in now, which is idiots realize they can just basically vote themselves benefits until they've hollowed out the civilization, which they're doing, because that's human nature for the greedy and the stupid. The thing about India and the Chinese is I don't think that they have the right elements in their bioculture to innovate the type of things that the West has. And even now with the West brain draining the best minds from a lot of places, or has, when shit happens, there'll be this initial hit where all kinds of people get wiped out, but we're all like, there's a massive population right now, and then in the dust, there'll still be people left, and when the West hits back, I don't know, things will get crazy. I just can't see India becoming like a superpower above the U.S. ever. China maybe. I don't see India doing it. I don't know, like, if balkanization is not the good word, not a good term for it really, but like, what was the word? There's a euphemism for balkanization that I heard the other day that I wanted to use. Something zones. Maybe something along, not self-autonomous zones or something. I forget exactly how it was a euphemism. I liked it better than balkanization, but that might happen. Honestly, I can't even. It's so futurism is always the most difficult subject, and now like everything is headed in such a chaotic way with the way that this so-called pandemic is happening and everything else that I can't even make a prediction for where things are gonna go. Really difficult, but like I just think by 2030 something like there like big stuff is coming. Society is changing for sure, and I also obviously think that like a lot of what's going on right now is a giant scam that isn't going to end naturally until something happens. So everyone should start preparing for all kinds of things, and a decrease in quality of life for most people, lifestyle. Do you think it is possible for the West to establish hegemony again? Should we be looking for an empire to solve the problems of the Republic? I honestly don't know. We're all corrupted and sort of like a dying empire right now. But when I interviewed Ricardo Duchesne, he talked about Rome having a period where they did actually reverse their like weakening trajectory for a while and kind of got hard again and then soft again. So it's possible. I don't know, with the right type of war and the right circumstances that culture changes, and then the West has another resurgence. The West is always like going, unlike every other civilization, the West is unique, right? So it's always going through these transformations and absorbing and mutating. So who knows? Like, who knows with cryptocurrency and technology? But again, I'm like more black pill these days. So I think cyberpunk predicts a more accurate future than the golden era of science fiction. The golden age of science fiction produces stuff like Star Trek, visions of the future, very epic, very visionary, colonizing the solar system and the galaxy, and very optimistic. So much human potential. But the truth is, like, with the system that we're in now, what we're really headed for is like a technocracy and a neo-feudalist state with high tech, low morality, shitty people living in a dystopian world, with like transhumanism going on around them, and a lot of people living in cyberspace and in virtual reality rather than the physical world. So their physical bodies will rot, and like dystopian cyberpunk visions of the future I think are much more accurate of where we're headed than the optimism of the golden era of science fiction. Says, I'm in agreement. Exact predictions on these are hard to make. I just have estimates given these current trends. The thing about Islam is that like I honestly think probably because it's younger and it's been able to learn or observe like the flaws of things that came before it, and it is congruent with a lot of sociobiology. It has this strength to it, and it's like it'd be hard to ever like extinguish it. So there's a lot of strength to the way Islam operates as an ideology, for sure. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I don't see them becoming like the world superpower in my lifetime, but they're also not going to go away or be extinguished or anything like that. Christianity is a different thing altogether. Christianity by its nature was a bit different because it's branched off into so many denominations, and most of it's all been subverted. And the biggest branches of like the Catholic Church have been subverted from within the Vatican and the popes and all that. Everything is just kind of like super liberal. And the United Church that I was raised in, the United Church in general, the ones here in Toronto, they all have like BML and pride flags on the door and stuff. So it's Christianity, I would say, is already sort of died off or mutated or something. It's Islam is a different beast, more of a unified thing, and has strengths to it. Yeah, we'd have to get a nationalist type of populist movement going. The PPC is a populist grassroots movement, but it's more libertarian. We need a national. See, I forgot to finish my thought that it started earlier. I wanted a national, like a country like Canada that was its own nation with its own borders and had its own cultural ethos within it. And part of that ethos within it that conservatives would be conserving was like a classical liberal type of culture where you had the right to express yourself more like there are definitely restrictions. I wouldn't allow advocating for pedophilia, but and a lot of stuff about sexuality that I understand now that I didn't when I was younger has direct political implications for it. So I'm not a pure libertarian anymore because human beings are more complex, especially developmentally. And well, I believe in a libertarian ethos, but I don't believe that people are free of morality. So I'm not an anarchist or anything like that in a pure sense. Where was I going with that? So I like that the PPC is sort of a populist movement with a libertarian-esque mindset. It's just because it is a grassroots movement of everyday people. It doesn't have a lot of sophisticated people in it that would understand like the much more complex stuff involved in like nation building or real nationalism. But if the PPC could mutate into something that was more of a Canadian nationalist movement, protecting a Canadian culture that had values like that, basically the classical Western values, freedom of speech, things like that, but also with a strong military, I would love all of that. I would love a Canada, I guess, as I theorize out loud, like a Canada that had strong borders. It wasn't racially defined, but wasn't being changed by mass immigration, and probably literally had a Starship Troopers model where you had to do military or social service to get the right to vote and to be a citizen with skin in the game to vote. And I'd like a strong military, get rid of most of the cultural Marxist shit, and stop mass immigration, incentivize local native-born people or native citizens to have families. That would all be in the future when you have more of when you're working on building the country up. Right now, I think that the problem is we have to resist the tyranny that's being forced on people. So it's not the time. Not the time is not to build. The time is to go on the defense, I guess. What are your thoughts on how PKD said that a lot of his novels were meant to show how to resist tyrannical regimes despite his praise of and identification with fascism? Well, you're aware of something that a lot of people are not going to be familiar with, even people who really like Philip K. Dick that have read a lot of his work, because Iswald has showed me in the past that in this one passage, Philip K. Dick self-identifies as a fascist, and I wish I could. Iswald, if you can, shoot me a link or even DM me on Facebook if you have a link so I can read the exact quote. I think it's from the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was from that, right? And I'm not enough. I have several Philip K. Dick books on my shelf over there, and a book called The Philosophy of Philip K. Dick, but I don't have the Exegesis, which was kind of like this big thing he wrote, like a journal on philosophy, blah blah blah. But I'm not really aware of it enough to like. That's a really good question. I just can't give a good answer. Yeah, like so he definitely wrote a lot of stories that were, against like authoritarian regimes, like The Running Man, and a lot of his classic stuff, even Blade Runner, not Blade Runner, Running Man, Man in the High Castle, I think, a bunch of other examples. They're about resisting tyrannical regimes, but he definitely, you'd have to help me explain that. I don't know how to reconcile him identifying as a fascist with how he would, like his take on tyrannical, because if he identifies as a fascist, his ideal fascist regime wouldn't be tyrannical by definition. So I guess he probably just thinks that there's such a thing as like a non-tyrannical form of fascism. 200 million Muslims are the start of the 1900s, 1.5 billion in the early 2000s. Yeah, sure, but there cataclysms happen all the time. Who knows, man? I think with the way actually this is in your favor for your argument of I'm against a certain thing that the governments want to force into your body. And when the Taliban kicked the U.S. out of Afghanistan and took over, they immediately banned that thing, and they're not. I don't know if all I don't know which Muslim countries are, but some Muslim countries obviously are not at all complying or taking this global pandemic thing seriously. So good on them. Jealous, wish my government or my people would do that. And if what I suspect, I don't think with this. I want the stream to stay up, and I don't want to have problems with the stream per se. So I don't want to trigger the algorithm by saying certain things. But if what I suspect is coming, then the population may very well the proportion of the human race that is Muslim may explode potentially in the next 10 to 20 years, depending on because if a lot of Muslim people are not participating in experimental gene therapy, and a lot of other people around the world are. I imagine that would just only be good for propagating the Muslim people, right? Or they're going to deal with less sterilization issues and et cetera, et cetera. So you'll figure that out for yourself. Okay, so let's just check your Facebook. Give me 1 sec here, guys. This is a great quote. Iswald has sent it to me here. Let me read this to you because this is really interesting. As a PKD fan, keep in mind Philip K. Dick wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the book that Blade Runner was adapted from. So, which was a great book about empathy and the human existence and everything. So the guy who wrote that is saying this. Although appearing left-wing, my training is really fascistic. Not fascistic as Marxist rhetoric defines it, but as Mussolini defined it, in terms of the deed and the will, with reality deontologized, reduced to mere stuff on which the will acts in terms of deed. Since few living people correctly understand genuine fascism, my ideology has never been pejoratively stigmatized by the left, but those to whom I appeal are in essence the core bulk of latent masses, the fascistic mob. I speak of and for the irrational and the anti-rational, a kind of dynamic nihilism in which values are generated as mere tactics. Thus my real idol is Hitler, who starting out totally disenfranchised rose to total power while scorning wealth, aristocracy, plutocracy to the end. My real enemy is plutocracy. I've done my fascistic homework. ... My fascistic premise is, there is no truth. We make truth. What we first believe becomes objectively true. Objective truth depends on what we believe, not the other way around. This is the essence of the fascistic epistemology. The perception of truth is ideally imposed on reality, mind over matter. Alright, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I had read that before and gone over it, but I hadn't memorized it. And now that you bring it up, that's pretty deep. So I have to let that percolate in my mind or really comment on it more. Something that I took from when I say I'm fascistic, and I'm like Bruce Lee, right? I'm trying to see what resonates with me from all kinds of different ideologies, and I'm fascistic in the sense that some ideologies, I think most, a lot of anarchism and communism and libertarianism are all based in materialism. And I liked, give me a second, let me grab it off my bookshelf, hold on a second. Last winter when I was really trying to read as much fascist literature as I could, one of the things that I like about The Origins and the Doctrine of Fascism by Gentile and Mussolini is, in the ways that I'm fascistic, is that fascism is not, it's anti-materialism, and it acknowledges, I guess, the spirit and that life is struggle, and that there's a spiritual struggle that takes place, and that the whole Nietzsche thing of like the will to power that the Nazis were so influenced by. Like I like to internalize that. Um, by the way, if you're paying attention, like the images in the background aren't even random. I didn't even think about this, but the map, I like I was saying, I love the Western Canon. I love the West. That's why the maps are there. Ancient Greece down there, and then uh, right there is Conan the Barbarian, right? And that movie is one of my favorite movies. And it starts off with the Nietzsche quote: "Whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger." And I guess as I was saying, I didn't really even think about it, but there's that image of Conan in the background. Conan is the ultimate kind of example of master morality, not slave morality. He was born a slave, but in the movie, he ascends from slavery and rises up through the ranks and eventually becomes king. So there's that whole will to power theme, and that master morality, and that's I like to put symbology and imagery in my own living space that it inspires me, and this is the kind of stuff that I like to look, because I've expanded my room off camera. It's also my home gym. Is my room's a gym too, right? And a library. And so I like to look at like stuff like that, like Conan, when I'm like either working out or I'm writing or reading, because like it's the essence of Conan. It really does tap into like a lot of that Nietzschean philosophy. And there's like a fascist, like Arnold's father was a National Socialist, and there's fascistic elements to it. So what I was getting at is I'm not, there's not, I don't love everything about like fascism, right? But there are some things that I resonated with that I would apply to my own third party kind of position. One being an acknowledgement, like in this, which is kind of like a manifesto, where it's the origins, it's the doctrine of fascism laid out, right? Short. Part of the doctrine is like acknowledgement of the spiritual nature of man, or of consciousness, that not the material, and the acknowledgement of struggle, and like this is what I've internalized over through being around strong men in my real life, like having a strong father figure and just being around other strong guys and reading all this stuff. Like and my own experiences that have made me stronger through suffering, both physically and like heartbreak and whatever. So that like now I just like I fully acknowledge that life is suffering, and just go out. You go out there and you just struggle with it. It makes you stronger, not to be a pussy, and that's what the meditations by Marcus Aurelius is good for, to like, and Stoicism, that's why training martial arts is really good. That's why I like to, every morning I go and I either spar or I'm doing drills and strength conditioning all day long. It's part of a lifestyle now, because strong body, strong mind, and knowing that, life is fucking struggle, and not to complain about it, not to be a victim, but like, just to keep going forward. I am surrounded by weak-willed people in this city, and my coworkers, even people that they have anxiety attacks over meaningless little things. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that the average person in the culture and the civilization around me is extremely mentally fragile, and it's a horrible way to be. And all of that, like toxic masculinity is one thing, but just masculinity in general is an extremely important thing to me. It's like my identity is absolutely based around masculinity, and I like images of strength and courage, honor. The courage and the honor value is it's in me intrinsically, and I don't know how memory and instinct get passed on in strictly biological terms, or how the soul kind of is evolved, like, but the soul, I don't know how spirituality, consciousness, the soul, and the physical body, in what way they've evolved together or produced one another, but I know that a lot of the way I am is intrinsic to me, whether it's and it has to obviously play a role from my own background genetically and racially or whatever. I come from a line of literally strong men. My own father's a lot bigger and stronger than I am, and his father was a lot bigger and stronger than he was, and like there's a military history and all that there. So this has to have played into me, because I see these weak-willed people around me, and they, to be honest with you, on a very personal level, I'm disgusted by a lot of people's just weak-willedness and their submissiveness and like whatever. Not that I'm this giant alpha guy or anything, but like it, there are some things where like, I'll plant my feet, like with these, what's going on right now with the government tyranny, right? Like, fuck you, make me, man. That's my fucking attitude with some of this shit, and that's what it's gonna come down to that, and we'll just see, man. Because when I put my feet in, we're gonna, I like that the obsession with willpower and the strength of the mind. That's intuitively in me. So when the fascists talk about that, I trust me, I get that very intuitively. Can go either way though. I mean, libertarians are super. That's in me too, right? And then don't tell me what to do things. So I'm like half fascist, half libertarian, and like a bit like some kind of yin yang thing in me, because I recognize the need for discipline and strength and masculinity and order, but I also don't like tyranny or like being told what to do, or basically like imposing on other people's free will in any way. I know that the non-aggression principle is naively unrealistic. That's why I like martial. I believe in being like a martial culture or whatever. That's another thing. Like culture, like some cultures have an ethos of strength, and like even Thailand, right? The whole Muay Thai thing is a national sport. I think is cool. We don't like Canada. We kind of had hockey, but that's kind of as a demographic change that's dying off. So I think it'd be beneficial though if like Canada became a country known for like a boxing country where hey man, Canada, like Russia is known for the toughest wrestlers, right? Like Cuba makes like the best boxers or whatever. But imagine Canada became known as a country where they're producing like badass boxers. That'd be awesome, man. Culturally. Sorry guys, just looking at the chat again. So to go back to that Philip K. Dick quote, great quote, really deep. I gotta think about it. I'm gonna read it again because I don't know how to post. It's a huge quote, so I don't think it'll let me copy and paste it. Let me read this quote again, just for interest's sake, for anyone watching the chat. This is Philip K. Dick, the famous writer, commenting on fascism. He says, although appearing left-wing, my training is really fascistic. Not fascistic as Marxist rhetoric defines it, but as Mussolini defined it, in terms of the deed and the will, with reality deontologized, reduced to mere stuff on which the will acts in terms of a deed. Since few living people directly understand genuine fascism, my ideology has never been pejoratively stigmatized by the left, but those to whom I appeal are in essence the core bulk of the latent masses, the fascistic mob. I speak of, and for the irrational and the anti-rational, a kind of dynamic nihilism in which values are generated as mere tactics. Thus my real idol is Hitler, who starting out totally disenfranchised, rose to total power while scorning wealth, aristocracy, plutocracy to the end. My real enemy is plutocracy. I've done my fascistic homework. My fascistic premise is, there is no truth. We make truth. What we first believe becomes objectively true. Objective truth depends on what we believe, not the other way around. This is the essence of the fascistic epistemology, the perception of truth as ideology imposed on reality, mind over matter. Few comments of my own on this. Let me just Google something here to make sure. The definition of ontology is the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being, or a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relations between them. I forget the exact phrase I'm looking for, but basically there's like, in the era of fascist, Italy and Nazi Germany, you had like an ontology or a collection of thoughts and philosophers at the time, like Heidegger and Nietzsche and stuff. And so like there's a specific sort of there are schools of thought that are laid out and that are kind of specific to that era. And like a lot of this refers to that stuff. I'm not super well read on like Heidegger, and some of it kind of has these. It starts off by making definitions and then going from there, but their definitions are like, I don't know, they're not like the be all end all of things. Like, and even in what he's talking about, the reason I have to let the quote digest is that he's talking about, with the reality. I think there's some objective truths, and then individual consciousness imposes subjective reality on things as well. So there's a bit of there are elements of reality that are completely subjective, and there are elements of reality that are objective, that are shared between individual units of consciousness. So a bit of both. But I think I'm agreeing with what he's saying there, basically. Sorry guys, where's my coffee? I have had a long day, and I'm starting off with boxing training, and then a full day of work, and then another little workout at home afterwards, and then trying to write a script for a video for Freebirds. I'm actually pretty tired, and definitely relying on this coffee to keep my brain firing right now. Again, huge thanks to for the super chat. I'm gonna read it again just because it's a funny comment that he threw in here, and he said, Huxley, the world ends with euphoria and hedonism. Orwell, the world ends with slavery and tyranny. Asimov, the world ends with AI and human extinction. Muslim, the disbelievers pursue all three via their master Iblis/Satan. So, despite the Muslim part at the end that Alf is championing, if we look at the other three things being said at the world around us, when I look around me, I like Huxley predicted, do I see hedonism everywhere? Definitely. There's a pot shop every 100 meters all around me, so there are marijuana's everywhere, and most people are just kind of like hipsters are just kind of doing a lot of cocaine and smoking drugs, and there's OnlyFans and just a hedonistic lifestyle embraced by people all around me. And then Orwell says the world ends slavery and tyranny. Meanwhile, this same kind of group of hedonists engaging in this liberal degeneracy are voting for the Liberal Party, which is imposing more and more slavery and tyranny on us with literal speech codes and everything. So we're getting the hedonism, we're definitely getting the tyranny, and as Asimov says in the world of AI and human extinction, and we're getting serious problems with the AI. So that the tyranny and the AI go together with the hedonism. So these nightmare scenarios painted by Asimov and Orwell and Huxley have all of them have been different, but they've all kind of simultaneously come true in a way, which is fucked. And that's another awesome reason, though, you should read literature and get an education, because everyone in this conversation right now is an intelligent person that's quite well read, and this is a more highbrow conversation, really, that a lot of people just couldn't even appreciate, but being able to is awesome. And I am using Freebird Media to promote, free speech is really just means free thought, and that's a huge part of what I'm about. And because I do like to, I'm trying to internalize it's kind of a cliche, but not really. Like I used to say it almost as a joke, but now I'm saying it's just like the whole warrior philosophy ethos. Like I was telling someone the other day, I know people that are more physically fit than me, but they're usually not smarter than me. And I know people that are smarter than me, but they're not usually more physically fit than me. So I'm doing a good job of kind of trying to just evolve in both areas. And another thing too is, I already did a video last week about that book, Functional Training. And as I've grown older, I've realized that if you continuously are learning new things, new languages, new instruments, new physical skills, you're always producing more gray matter in your brain and strengthening your brain. And the more gray matter you have in your brain, the slower you age, and the better off physically you are. So now I'm doing this whole program where I'm sort of I'm an amateur, right? But I'm trying to be more than a martial artist, more than a pioneer, more than a philosopher, combine all of them. So I'm trying to learn Spanish with Duolingo more, but I'm also keeping a journal now where I write in cursive language with my left hand, even though I'm right-handed, and I'm boxing. So with boxing, with all the physical stuff I'm doing, what I'm doing is I'm creating new neural pathways in my brain with new neurons that are firing together as I do the same movement patterns over and over again, which is why my entire body language has changed over the last few years. And I've definitely carved out new neural pathways in my brain, because by doing the same repetitions and creating the muscle memory of a boxer, I've made these certain pathways stronger, reinforced, because the neurons that fire together wire together. At the same time, learning a language like Spanish is causing new neurons to light up in the brain, causing more gray matter. So what I'm getting at is, what's the relationship between physical training, like lifting weights and boxing, and mental training, like learning a new language or learning to code or something? Well, in a sense, they're both types of physical brain training. They're both types of training that send feedback to your brain and create gray matter in the brain. So mental training and physical training really are all ways of creating more gray matter in the brain. The more gray matter you have, the slower you age, like I said, and the healthier you are. So I'm trying to become ambidextrous by writing with my left hand, which is friggin', you would not believe this unless you try it yourself. I'm right-handed, right? So now if I sit down with a pen and I try to write for 10 minutes in a journal with my left hand, my brain like itches by the 10th. It's physically painful to do. Like it's like as I'm doing it, I wince just to get through the last few minutes of writing because it feels so fucking weird. Because my brain is not adapted to do that, right? But if I keep doing this, so after a couple of years, or I don't know how long it's going to take, but I picked this up from the Bioneers channel. I'm gonna have to carve out new pathways in my brain, and do this. But then I'll have more strength as a martial artist and all kinds of stuff, practical function in real life. I'm trying to multitask by, that. There's a lot of cool science and stuff laid out in that book I was recommending by Sinicki there. If you support his channel and you get his book. You can read up more on that, which is really cool. Back down. Sorry, guys, just catching up in the chat again. Tech will kill you faster. Look at Japan, the most AI-friendly nation on the planet. They are dying. There's modernity, like Kaczynski said, modernity has all these problems, and I don't have solutions yet. I'm going to read his book and then try to be creative. For now, like I said, I just predict. I see problems coming, so I'm saying I'm predicting the short-term survival strategies. I know, like we need to create a subculture, on an alternative to the main culture of the people who are all have their passports and whatever, and those of us who don't need to stick together and have our own subculture based on stoicism, and I would promote like a master morality. And also practical, like trade and do business with each other and support each other. If we, support each other's businesses and try to avoid the big box stores and stuff like that. So putting all this into practice is going to be important. What are your thoughts on how, in Origins and Doctrine, Gentile talks about how the authority of the state can reside outside of the government when the government becomes illegitimate? I'm trying to think of exactly what he said, what he said in that regard. What are your? I did read this recently, but you have to clarify what. I don't remember specifically what he said on that matter outside of. About how does it reside outside of the government when the government becomes illegitimate? I forget what he said specifically. When Pika Dick says deontologize, he's talking about reality being reduced to its most fundamental level. Okay, fair enough. That's kind of like where I like to start philosophically, just naturally with my own type of philosophy, right? Trying to be purely agnostic, trying to meditate into a purely detached state. What is reality at its most fundamental level? I don't have a solid answer for this, but I know that I think that consciousness is some sort of fundamental thing. The property of subjective self-awareness, or of the mind, being a combination of awareness with apparent the phenomenon of free will, is human consciousness is some sort of it's more fundamental than the material matter that we interact with. Mind over matter, for sure. It's not really like a theory anymore. That's observable and known, and a principle in many things. So it must be weird to become conditioned to believe in a material paradigm, because the placebo effect is real. So if you program yourself to believe in materialist stuff, how does that it must have all kinds of negative effects on you. I think the reason that I've been able to make so much progress with physical fitness, martial arts and whatever is because I don't subscribe to a lot of the actual belief systems that normal people do, especially regarding the rate of age and things like that. I think that most people, when they start to age at the age of 30 or so, it's because of lifestyle, not yeah, it's mostly lifestyle. It's not genetics or anything like that. Um, it's the selection of the philosophy of the Trenchian. Um, the thing with fascism is that even though with the European fascists, that like Italian fascism is not specifically racial, but even being non-racial, if you're in Italy and the government becomes like corrupt, the people are still kind of like a collective people that can then have that like fascism requires a spirit of collectivity, right, or of being feeling like you're part of a people. That could still manifest, like the spirit of fascism could manifest in Italy because they are essentially like mostly ethnically homogenous, or like there's Sicilians and then the mainlanders and there were Jewish people in Italy. I know all that, but basically there's still like a people there, a sense of being Italian. In Canada, if the this is also this does directly tie in to connect a dot here from my earlier video this week with the immigration, why they want to up it from 300 to 400 and bring in non-white people that have multiple identities. It's so that there isn't a coherent or unified identity in the masses to unify against the elites. The elites want everyone atomized and individualized to the point where there's no collective mentality there to revolt against them. That's the game, right? Sorry guys, I just got to microwave my coffee here. So, just to recap here, earlier in the stream, I talked about the Western Canon. We were talking about 1984, and I was recommending the importance that everyone just not paying money to go to university to study the Western Canon, but just studying it independently themselves and watching YouTube videos and reading books about it and stuff. And so I said that everybody should have the Odyssey and the Iliad, and they should also have copies of the Holy Bible and Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. They should also have Beyond Good and Evil. I also think that they should have The Death of Arthur, Faust, the work of Shakespeare, Gulliver's Travels by Swift, which is a great work of satire, 1984, Brave New World. What are some of the other works that I'm forgetting off the top of my head? Don Quixote, Quixote, how you pronounce it. That is a giant satire on chivalry. I never actually read that. I just heard my professor's lecture about it, but it's also a very long read, so I never actually got to read it. Acewald says check Facebook, so just give me a second to check my Facebook. Okay, I see that you sent me I'm not sure if this is a quote from Mussolini or if this is just a description of the concept, but what Acewald has sent me says, the truncheon of fascist squadrism sought to serve and served as the avenging force of the state that had been disrespected and denied by its very constituent central organs. The force was the necessary surrogate of the state in a period of revolution, and according to the logic of all revolutions, the state was in crisis and its force was gradually transferred from its active if legal organs to its real if illegal organs, which sought to establish themselves in legality. After the March of Rome, the first problem of fascism was the suppression of squadronism, which was transformed into the voluntary militia to become part of the legal armed forces of the state. The truncheon was thus retired to the attic with the hope that it need not ever emerge from the Origins and Doctrine. Okay, so that's a quote from Origins and Doctrine. Well, here's the thing, kind of as I was saying, is that I guess what he's saying is that, and I believe in Mussolini and Gentile's conception of fascism, that fascism to them is the expression of the people. It's like it's the spirit of the unified people. That is fascism. So I guess what he's saying is you've got the spirit of it, and the politicians or the government being the organs of it, and when they are corrupt or like when the government, which is supposed to be working, which is supposed to be of the people, for the people, I guess you could say, or like it's the manifestation of the will of the people. So when the state has become corrupt, then that spiritual essence can exist outside of the state, and rebel against the state, I guess, to like reinforce the will of the fascistic mob or something. I guess that's what he's getting at in saying that, if you can say that if fascism exists outside of the state, then I guess that's kind of what he's hinting at. But what I'm saying is like that would be really hard to manifest in a culture like modern day Canada, where there's just really broken up, atomized groups. I would argue that the people that do that have that spirit, are the people that band together into fringe political parties like the CNP or the PPC, even guys like us, right? So, sorry, I was on my Facebook. Going back to the chat. Hazel says your interpretation is spot on. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so that's kind of what I took from it. So yeah, my response though would be that in a present day Canadian context, that would be incredibly hard to do because we don't have that fascistic spirit. We don't even have a nationalistic spirit because we're not really a nation anymore. A nation, a nation and a state are two different things. A nation is a group of people. The state is the literal group of people that have the physical force to enforce rules on a territory. So a nation state is a group of people that have a territory that they have for themselves, right? In this case, people don't have a sense of being a unified group of people, so there is no nation. Canada is a post-national state. It's just a territory controlled by a state now with a bunch of atomized people inside of it. So we don't have a fascistic spirit or a nationalistic spirit. So it'd be hard. That wouldn't exist in Canada, unfortunately, today. In a sense, I say unfortunately because anything that can, we have to find a way to resist tyranny, which is going to happen, which is happening to us. They're making a play to transition all of society. And if you're like a chess player, or again, you learn to think and you can think long term, I think what the elites would like to do is transform the world into like a society of basically serfs or slaves, and then put the Orwellian process of controlling your thoughts on steroids and dumbing you down, and then, like I said, basically creating a subspecies of dumbed down cattle humans, which is terrifying, and that's no way to spiritually exist. So that can't come to be, and people are going to have to resist. And I think that the elites are trying to destroy the Canadian economy on purpose, and they're trying to fill people up with force things in your body you shouldn't have in your body. They're doing all this to basically destroy. National identities are basically illusions at this point. They're just franchises run by the IMF and a few other international power groups. But basically, in Canada, we would need people that, I'm nationalistic minded. That's why and I think the CNP has the right vision, kind of. But I also am grassroots populist minded. I think that, and so I like the PPC because it's an actual party, it's a fringe party, but it's still a growing size populist party, not like the CNP, which is a true minor, tiny little fringe party. The PPC, I like in that sense. I wonder if you could generate some sort of fascistic sentiment among a multiracial group of people like PPC supporters. That's an interesting question. Yeah, says Canada is the world's first post-nation. Thanks, Trudeau. That sucks. That really sucks. Most people are not educated enough or sophisticated enough to understand what that means. They might have heard that in the news or audio clip passing. They can't appreciate what that means, and it's shitty. It's really shitty. I don't want to be part of a post-national state. The state usually sucks. Acewald, it has an optimistic view of the state, which I can share too. If you have a vision, and this good national government could be run in a very great way, and if things had gone differently historically, we might have had a golden era with like a great empire that didn't end up in some kind of fucking cyberpunk neo-feudal shithole, and we actually did have a Star Trek type future and colonize the solar system and all that. That would have been awesome, man, and unite humankind in this sort of ubermensch pursuit of going out there and that Faustian drive of colonizing the fucking universe, man, and like exploring the fucking galaxy and innovating new technology and light speed, and just that drive to go out there. And we could have possibly had all that if we didn't have like the shitty bullshit we have with international banking and all this other crap that just like, and the cancerous elements on operating around and within us that hold us back, that it came to be. It didn't necessarily have to be that way. It was just, the way the cookie crumbled. But, unfortunately, most of the time the state is just tyrannical right now. So, I'm just not, Acewald, I never really disagree with Acewald. I tend to be more, like, I'm much more skeptical now of the potential for a great state. Kyle McCormick says, I want Western independence. What does Ottawa do for us? Honestly, nothing. And because Canada is now just a corrupt post-national state, I kind of would support Western independence. And maybe maybe there's a demographic like us that can all move to the center of Canada and form some kind of alliance with the middle of the United States straight down to Florida, and just have some kind of, all the libtards on the coasts and some kind of unified state in between from the top of Canada down to, like I say, Florida. I don't know. That'd be interesting. Next one says, do you think when atomized is at its worst, that's when the need for collectivism comes forward? I don't know. I think that maybe, despite all the racial and superficial identity things that people are taught to get carried away with, the one true unifier of things that will bring everyone together is economic class. And when we're all poor and being fucked over, we're going to start to relate to each other, because there's going to be the rich and there's going to be all of the multicolored little sprinkled people at the bottom that are literally all united around just being poor and like economically desperate. And that's, maybe we can build some kind of anti-elite sentiment around that, and the one unifying thing will be economic class rather than anything else. Because either that or become Americans, all of us. Yeah, maybe. I have family, my dad's American, I have family in the States, maybe I'll have to go there. So heads up, guys, I'm not going to keep this stream going for too much longer, because I'm getting a headache from being up so long today, and I need sleep, and then I got to train again in the morning. So just a little bit longer, we'll keep going. Really appreciate everyone taking part in the conversation tonight. And like I said, I'm going to do some more streams soon, and then on the weekend I'm going to be up in the Ottawa area, and I'm going to be filming a bunch of outdoor stuff, because I'm trying to diversify this channel. I'm going to do streams like this, and I love having these I like having these dialectic conversations with like-minded people. It's really enjoyable, and I like talking about literature and books, and I like talking about training and actually training. So I'm going to do more like functional fitness stuff outdoors, and it's really, really scenic where I'm going to be going. So I'm just going to be trying to get some good, nice, like cinematography filmed, and do a video on like outdoor training and stuff. Really big into physical fitness and not having a commercial gym. And once you really learn what you're doing, there's just so many awesome ways to train outside naturally that are better than being in some shitty corporate commercial gym anyway. So, and that's part of the ethos. Like I said, I'm trying to recommend that people read a lot, teach themselves how to think, not what to think, but how to think critically. Develop that inner monologue. Learn learn how to think. Take classes on logic, and there's different types of logic. Instead of having a binary logic, learn a multi-tiered system of logic, like an either-or logic. Learn quantum logic. Learn how to think. Learn what logic is. Learn how to argue. Learn what a straw man is. Learn, there's like. Philosophy 101 will teach you all the basic tactics of like dissecting a good argument, appeals to authority, straw manning, all that stuff. Learn how to think, become well-read and widely read. Being widely read and being well-read are two different things. Being widely read means, I think I'm widely read, but also be well-read. And if you want to be well-read, read specifically the Western Canon. Start there. It is objectively the best literature. So be well read, be widely read, be physically fit, and embrace all of that. And then that's the ethos I want to promote, and be independent, right? So I want to do more. I'm going to do outdoor training videos, but then when I go home next weekend, I can do more on like self-sufficiency, and just keep evolving. Like I've been evolving continuously well through my 30s now, so we should all keep evolving, keep supporting each other. And I guess those are my final thoughts for tonight. Let me just give one recap of all the books I recommended. These are all solid books that everyone should just like order and read, because this is all good use of your time. As far as the Western Canon goes, everyone get themselves copies of the Bible as literature. You got to read it. Meditations, Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche, Plato's The Republic. This is seminal, very, very important, not a super long read. The Iliad and the Odyssey. I don't have the Iliad here because it's at my parents' house, but this is Odyssey. Get yourself a copy of both of those. I mentioned Tribe by Sebastian Junger. Really, really fun, quick read. Get that. I haven't read this yet, but it's on my list. I'm trying to get to it right away. Anti-Tech Revolution by Kaczynski. That should be good. I meant to bring this up in the stream, but I didn't. Once you've read the Western Canon or studied it for a few years, like I have, then this is a really awesome book. Kevin MacDonald's Individualism and the Western Liberal Tradition. Wanted to recommend that. And then since I briefly brought these up, get yourself The Origins and Doctrine of Fascism and read that. Read 1984 by George Orwell. And then for fiction in the Western Canon, read Tolkien, read The Hobbit, and read Lord of the Rings especially. So that's it for tonight. I'm going to stream again tomorrow. I've got more book reviews. Anyone that liked anything we talked about in the chat, please leave comments. I am really going to try to grow this channel again, because I need to try to develop some kind of residual side project that brings in some kind of money for me, or at least then if it doesn't do that, helps me share my views and be part of the culture war that way. So those are two things I'm trying to get out of it. Please tell people about my channel if you like it, or invite them to join these conversations with us. And with that said, just super glad that you guys were all in the stream tonight, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. So thanks everyone. Talk soon.